The next couple of detachments in the upcoming 10th edition Marine Codex have been shown off to us today over on Warhammer Community, and in these ones we see a playstyle in the form of the White Scars and the Raven Guard. So if your army is more of a speedy mounted type, then the Stormlance Task Force may be the one you pick, or if you wanted a stealthier, perhaps more Phobos-inspired army, then I think the Vanguard Spearhead may be the detachment for you. The Stormlance Task Force, as you can see in the image, is for your mounted units. That's kind of what it's themed around, and whilst it does have some benefits, apparently in the form of some of the stratagems and enhancements for things like Outriders, it is actually very much unit agnostic too. You can bring anything you want, and they will get benefits from this detachment. And this is seen in the genuinely brilliant detachment rule, which is Lightning Assault. And what Lightning Assault does is it gives all of your Astartes units, not just bikes and other fast moving things, it gives all of them the ability to charge even when they have advanced or they have fallen back. So this is of course going to be a huge boost to things like your fast moving bikes, but even if you wanted to run an all Blade Guard army or an all Terminator army or something like that, this still will be very, very handy too. It's really going to allow you to get your units up into the midfield and then charging into the enemy much more quickly than you otherwise could. Movement is, as always, really key and crucial in 10th edition 40k, and having basically army-wide advance or fall back and charge means that you can really keep that momentum going across your army as the game progresses. And then as you get into combat and start to kill enemy units, you can then dictate the best fights for your army by falling back and charging into other things, as kind of a unit is best placed to charge into perhaps something a bit stronger or a bit weaker as more and more of your units get into combat. So I do genuinely think that this detachment seems really good. It is going to be incredibly strong, having this fast moving army that can feel really fluid and slippery, and like your opponent can't really lock you down because you can just fall back and recharge. So you can really get around the board really quickly, avoid the combats you don't want to be in, and make sure you are in the combats you do, and just control that movement phase, which at the end of the day is one of the biggest things that will help you to win games. We also got to see our first hint at the rules for the imminently arriving Jump Pack Intercessors. These obviously do very well in this detachment, being a fast moving unit. The constant charging that you can do via advance and charge and fall back and charge is a fantastic boost to them, specifically because of their unit rule, Hammer of Wrath. And what this does is it lets you roll a d6 per model in your unit in engagement range of an enemy after you've charged, and then on a 4+, that enemy unit takes a mortal wound. So it's nothing amazing, it's not the most powerful unit ability we've seen across the game, but if you manage to get 8 or so from say a squad of 10 in engagement range of an enemy, you could very reliably pick off a couple of Marines or maybe even a Terminator or two if you're lucky, before the combat even starts. So it is a nice bonus to have, and as I said, I think in this detachment specifically, when you can fall back and charge back in every single turn, it is going to add up over the course of the game, and these boys will probably be super useful if you are running this detachment, so that you can get a few rounds of mortal wounds off and just keep plinking off a model or two here and there as you fall back and charge back in and fall back and charge into something else as the game goes on. Finally, in this detachment, we see a stratagem. Wind Swift Evasion is one command point and basically gives you a free move in the enemy movement phase. When an enemy unit finishes within 9 inches of one of your units, you can put this strat on them and they can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. So it's potentially not a full move if you use it on some fast moving infantry or bikes or whatever, but you can at least move up to 6 inches. So if you wanted to fall back from an enemy to make their charge harder, you can do that. Or if you wanted to use it as a chance to get even more up in the enemy's face, if you have say a block of Terminators and you want to just completely sort of hold the enemy back in their side of the table, you can do that. Maybe you could use it to jump onto an objective that your opponent thought you weren't in range of, or you could potentially use it to move your unit to screen another more vulnerable unit that is also at risk of being charged. So there is a lot you can do with this stratagem in terms of getting that extra 6 inches of movement. And I think for one command point, it again just gives you so much control over that movement phase, which again is just so crucial in 40k. If nothing else, this stratagem is going to make your enemy have to make some difficult decisions and really think about what they want to charge, because they could move up and then find out that their 6-inch charge has suddenly turned into a 12-inch one. So I think this is a really good stratagem for 1 CP, and I can imagine it being used in this detachment almost every turn just to get that extra movement around the board. On the Vanguard style front, the Vanguard Spearhead brings the Shadow Master's detachment rule. This, I think, is ridiculously good. It gives your Marine units not only the benefit of cover, but also a -1 to be hit when the enemy is over 12 inches away. So this is, for those of you that have played the game for a while, very similar to the old Vanguard style rules, but it does still just give you so much durability as the game begins. If you don't get first turn, or even if you do, but there are a lot of long-range enemy units like Devastators or Basilisks or Snipers, whatever it may be, this is going to make pretty much your entire army so much more survivable from those sort of Alpha Strike style shooting lists, and it's going to give things like your Terminators or your Assault Marines or your Blade Guard veterans the chance to get up the board as intact as possible and with as many models alive as possible, so that you can then charge into the enemy and cut them to pieces with as much power in your units alive as you possibly can. I think it's also interesting that this doesn't give you the stealth rule, like it's specifically its own thing. It doesn't just give your units stealth. So in theory, I think this would stack with stealth, giving you a potential -2 to be hit. Now, of course, they don't stack together to give something like actually -2 to their hit rolls, but it does mean that you can negate any potential +1 to hit that a unit may have and then push them down to be hitting on 1 worse. So a Marine, for instance, with +1 to hit from some kind of buff or aura would then be going back to 3s and then dropped to 4s with both of these effects combined. So it can make a really big difference, and I do think, as I said, this is a very strong rule for keeping your army as intact and alive as possible during those first opening game turns. The stratagem is also very good. Strike from the Shadows is 1 CP, and in your shooting phase you can shoot an infantry unit at an enemy, and if that enemy is over 12 inches away you get +1 ballistic skill and +1 AP. So now most of your units will probably be hitting on 2s and getting an extra pip of AP just to cut through a bit more armor, or at least negate cover that the enemy may have. So this is going to be a fantastic stratagem. Again, it's brilliant on anything from Intercessors to Devastator Marines to Desolation Marines. Everything that you have in your army that can shoot, that has over 12 inches of range, is going to really like this stratagem. And what's really nice about it is that because it has to be an enemy over 12 inches away, it gives you some really nice buffs to your damage output while still keeping you nice and safe from being 12 inches away thanks to your Shadow Master's rule. So it ties in really well with the detachment ability, and again I think for that first 1 or 2 turns in the game, this is going to be such a key stratagem for putting as much damage as you can downrange whilst keeping some of your units back to stay safe from your Shadow Master's detachment rule. So it really does mesh very well, and I love it because of that. On top of that, this stratagem also forces a battle shock test on an enemy if you manage to kill a model from the unit that you're targeting. So if your Marines are shooting at a faraway target on an objective, you will probably be hitting on 2s, getting a tasty -2 AP even on things like bolt rifles, and then if you kill a single guardsman or fire warrior or guardian, you will also be then forcing a battle shock on them and potentially messing up with any stratagem plans that your opponent may have had for them. So yeah, I think this is a really good stratagem, and I also think it's worth noting that because this stratagem goes on your unit, not an enemy, you can potentially split fire with it and say fire 5 intercessors at one squad and 5 intercessors at another squad, and potentially force 2 battle shock tests on the enemy if you manage to kill a model from each squad. So it's really flexible as well, but I just think it's such a strong ability to have on an army that wants to stay 12 inches away, so you can stay as survivable as possible whilst putting out that extra ballistic skill and AP on your weapons to kill as many of the enemy as you can too. I think in general both of these seem really good. There is a fantastic mix of movement buffs as well as some solid durability in the Vanguard detachment. I think both will see play, and I'll be honest with you, I think both look better than the other two that we saw previously. They are very themed, so you may want to lean into them if you run lots of bikes or lots of stealthy Phobos units, but as I said, they are definitely unit agnostic, and they really will be strong whether you are running all bikes, all Phobos, all vehicles, all Terminator, or just a mix of all the Space Marine units. So I really do like them, and I think if the rest of the detachments are sort of in this vein and style, the Marine Dex is going to be looking like a very strong winner to me. But as always, I would really love to know which of these rules you like the most and which detachment you will be bringing when the Codex does come out. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.